Welcome to Viseland, episode 5. And in this episode, we are going to be talking about something that is near and dear to Michael and I. And what is that going to be?
We are going to have a list, and this time it will be ranked, of the top 10 Canadian basketball players currently playing in the NBA.
Keyword currently, keyword
Yes.
right now. So if you're watching this, listening to this later, this is as of this very moment. We're talking June 2020. Who are the best? And it's cool to really take a look at this list because it's awesome to see how far Canada basketball has come. I mean, when we were coming up as kids, really the only guys in the NBA were like Bill Winnington and like Rick Fox.
Yeah. And I don't know if there was anybody other than Steve Nash, according to just Canada in general.
No, totally. But like those were the only guys you could look up. Or also Mike Smrek of the Lakers in the late 80s. Like, yeah, it was very few and far between. And now you look at it and like Canada can actually fill out a roster for the Olympics, with
they're probably going to have to cut NBA players.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing. If everybody opts in, which is the ultimate hope. Canada hasn't been to the Olympics since the year 2000, when they had Steve Nash. I believe
Todd McCullough.
RJ Barrett's father, Rowan, was on the team back then. It was definitely a very different looking squad than they would have now. They were hoping to go in 2016. That didn't work out. It's been a tough drive getting all of these guys to compete for Canada. One thing we do know is that Canada basketball knows gold, as we see in the background.
Got the T-shirt
on my shirt.
It is possible.
It did happen in the U19s. RJ Barrett, forever a legend for that one. With his
there's been periods where they've seen success on the AAU level too.
Absolutely.
Beating US teams.
Which we're going to delve into here on this list. So we have a list of the top 10. We're going to go from 10 to 1. And it's really based on, like Jason was saying earlier, it's based on where they are currently.
Right now,
it's not a future projection. I'm sure there are some arguments for a few spots on this list, but these are just how we see it as current day. And let's just kind of dive into this list. We're going to see some great Canadian players. Just before we start, 22 current Canadian players on NBA rosters right now. This past draft had 6 drafted, which was a new record, and 4 in the first round. And with RJ Barrett going 3, there have been 2 Canadians that have been the number 1 pick. They happened in back-to-back years.
With different levels of success.
Let's just dive into it.
I hate myself for saying this, but like Drake says, we're going to start it from the bottom.
Yeah. Oh,
And
definitely.
I hate myself for that.
Yeah. You're not the real best way to kick this off, Jace. Thanks.
I tried. Number 10.
Number 10. We have ta-da! For those looking at this jersey, it is an autographed Chris Boucher practice jersey. Chris Boucher is the 10th man on our list. He won a championship with Toronto last year, was loosely on their roster, but was still on their roster. He was the G League MVP and I believe Defensive Player of the Year.
He won both. He won G League MVP and Defensive MVP. Defensive Player of the Year. So that was huge for Raptors 905.
Killing it. So as Oregon alumnus and fans, Jason and I have seen a lot of big men come through the Ducks, and Chris Boucher had always he was like a legend because in the prep high school tournament, I remember hearing about this guy like just bursting on the scene, having like a huge weekend, but I heard he was old. I heard he was thin. I heard he wasn't academically qualified. A couple years in JUCO, he wins the NJCAA National Player of the Year his sophomore season, and luckily ends up on Oregon roster. The first game I saw of Chris Boucher, I was just blown away by his athleticism, his agility, and timing on the defensive end as far as a shot blocker.
Amazing.
And then the ability to stretch the floor as well. I remember tweeting out in the Baylor game I watched with him, he was an absolute game changer.
Well, I just remember him breaking a lot of records at Oregon for, again, like his things are shot blocks and 3-pointers made. He's a guy that can really like not even dribble the ball the entire game and have a huge impact on it. Because he's just a catch, shoot, gets that shot block. Yeah, I nothing but love. And I'm just, every time I watch him play, and especially this year with the Raptors, he is getting, had some spurts where he's getting a lot more playing time. It's like, I'm super proud of him and what he's done for that team. The one thing that does always make me mad is my nickname for him, Le Bloc Québécois, has never quite caught on.
Yeah, it's more the Swatter boy.
Yeah.
Due to the Boucher last name. He did bring, I think, like, I never tried it, but it looked like the worst looking poutine to University of Oregon games in his honor. As far as what he's doing this season, like he's really caught on. So he pretty much just goes to championship situations because his first year in the league, he was playing with Golden State.
Yeah, Golden State draft, like gave him a two-way after the draft.
He didn't officially win a ring, but I think they should give it to him because he most definitely was the reason that they ended up winning that ring. And then he was on the Raptors championship roster last year. This year, he's been doing some great things as the Raptors have the third best record in the NBA. Just super unique. It seems like he's always improving. He shot really poorly from the free throw line in college, and I look now, he's like nearly 80% from the line.
Yeah, that's not a weak point anymore. And again, it's like 46% field goal percentage, 6.5 points a game in 13 minutes a game.
But I'm guessing it's only that low because of the volume of 3-pointers he takes as well.
Yeah.
And the things that stood out to me, his per 36 numbers, he's averaging 17.3 points per game, 12 rebounds per game per 36, and also 2.6 blocks per game and a steal. I know his statistical profile was so unique, and he was loved by many scouts in just their analytics department. But him tearing his ACL during his senior year, his age, but he's come along really nicely. He's has a 122 offensive rating right now, and he's like getting legit. I'd say like bench time. He's not necessarily like in the rotation, but he's had opportunities because of injuries this year, and he's made the most of them.
He showed out in a few games. I remember one against the Lakers where he was a tough guy to stop. And the thing about him too is the more you learn about him and his story, it's like it's hard not to root for him.
Absolutely. Originally from St. Lucia, grew up in Montreal, and he beat out some really good players to be on this list, but I put him at 10.
Yeah, he deserves it. I mean, he comes out and shows out. So who do we have at number 9?
Number 9. This is a guy I was thinking of possibly ranking a bit higher. I think circumstances kind of dictate that he's a little lower right now, but still like giving really solid contributions for a very good team. And just it brings like a great deal of offensive versatility, ball skills, some shooting, and he has a streak of toughness, as I remember by him ripping Kevin Love's shoulder out of socket during the 2015 playoffs. When he has been with Team Canada, he's looked really, really good in international competition. Started with them like even when he was with Gonzaga. Kelly Olynyk, and I believe he is repping Kelowna, BC. Kamloops.
Kamloops, but he was born in, I know he was born in Toronto.
Yeah.
Grew up in Kamloops, so he kind of spans the coasts of Canada.
Yeah.
But, Kevin's, he's a good, he came in, he's kind of a stretch big, but he's tough, and he could be a little, obviously that moment with Kevin Love will forever live in a little infamy for Cavs fans, because that did not end well for them. But I think he's been a tough guy ever since he's been in the league for both Boston. Now he's with Miami.
Yeah. And, he's only playing 18.5 minutes per game this year, averaging 7.7 points. As far as his draft stock, I guess ultimately he's going to be known as one of the guys drafted right in front of Giannis. I think he was the 13th overall pick. So it was Kelly Olynyk, Shabazz Muhammad, Giannis Antetokounmpo. And the whole, now there's the legend of Danny Ainge wanted Giannis and so on and so forth, but he went with Kelly. Kelly, very good player, just not, you're kind of sometimes known as who you're drafted before.
Or yeah.
And one thing to mention with him is he played for Gonzaga, and he actually redshirted between his sophomore and junior season, which is kind of unusual. He was playing bench minutes for them. When he came back as a junior after that redshirt year, his draft stock just skyrocketed. Like, he was kind of painfully skinny, and he just, gained some excellent strength, and still had that skill set that makes him, that really solid modern day big. And he's more of like a third big guy, and he's not necessarily like somebody you want playing huge minutes, but he is really, really solid at his role. And another reason why Miami is a deep team and looking like one of the better teams in the NBA this year.
He's had some playoff runs with Boston, so he's had some, some of that experience too. No, I think he's a tough big, and obviously I side with Kevin Love though, so but I still think, Kevin,
that was bullshit.
Yeah, that was not the coolest, but I've always had that in for him ever since then. But I definitely respect what he does out there, and I mean that's part of the nature of the NBA.
Yeah, and like when you're looking at like his per 36 numbers, like he's pretty much what he was last year, like a little better as far as rebounding, and yeah, like I know they brought in Myers. Of course, they have Bam Adebayo. They just have a crowded front court right now. And still, he's a guy that I'm sure a number of teams would like to have.
Well, that's why in the playoff time, those crowded front court, I mean, that works in your favor. You always need an extra six fouls. If someone gets hurt.
Yeah, and Miami's going to be a really interesting team coming.
Yeah, it's a tough out.
For sure. This next player, I think some people might be a little surprised he's not a bit higher on the list. He forever lives in our hearts because of his international play at the youth level. He played a year at Duke, was consensus first-team All-American. The third pick in the 2019 NBA draft, Rowan Barrett Jr., otherwise known as RJ Barrett.
Is what the people may know him as. Yeah, RJ, I mean, again, rookie year right now on the Knicks. So those are two things that don't always add up to the best, performance statistically.
Yeah. Oh man, I went to the summer league in 2015, and I just remembered Julius Randle and watching that Lakers team, and the spacing was just so terrible. And Julius, obviously, like, he's a beast of a player, but the Knicks were looking at Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, wind up with like Julius Randle, Bobby Portis, Marcus Morris Sr. Like it didn't work out. And, Morris can shoot and everything, but he's better off guarding fours. it's a really tough situation for RJ right now. But the other thing that I will mention with RJ is that I think there were some qualities and some patterns where people kind of questioned him as a prospect as well. And you can't question his work ethic. You can't question his drive. Certainly like super aggressive, has some great flashes as a passer as well. Really strong. Not like the most bursty athlete or anything like that, but like ability to finish through contact, get to the line. Just still efficiency wise, you'd like to see a bit more.
No, totally. He's someone who also kind of in college. I mean, even though he didn't play with Zion most of the time because Zion was hurt, it's like he got a little bit overshadowed, and kind of the expectation level is really high for RJ for Canada basketball. And I think going to the Knicks isn't just right now just not a good thing for. I wouldn't wish that upon anybody.
Yeah, it's tough, and you hope that they get somebody that could possibly fit alongside him in the draft. Eventually, he's going to have to shoot.
Yeah, well,
he's getting better there, and he's still, the indicators aren't great, and it's just something I think he's going to work on. You just wonder if it's really all going to come to fruition. But yeah, if he improves that, 3-point shooting percentage and improves the things he really needs to work on, like ultimately.
Yeah, well, the thing with the league right now is like shooting is such a premium that it's like if you can't shoot, you can't, you can't be on the court for unless you're a center, and even then we'd like you to shoot. Like it's one of those either you got it or you don't kind of things that really kind of separates a lot of players in this era of the NBA right now. Is like it's hard to be a 2-3 whatever wing and not be able to really shoot the 3-point at a high clip or be at least pretty dependable.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the other thing is like you have to make twos at a high clip, and
yeah,
he hasn't really done that yet either. Still takes a lot of tough shots, has some trouble creating separation, but I still have a lot of faith in him. I think
the last
statistic when we re-rank this in like a year or like 2 years, I think he'll be well up the list. I just think there's a lot to like about RJ Barrett just as a person, as a worker, and even as a basketball player.
Well, he led Canada to a U19 gold. He led Canada to U19 gold there, and he's 19 right now. And that was 2 years ago. So it's like he's got bright future. Some pedigree. I mean, Steve Nash is his godfather. He's definitely going to be someone who's going to put in that work. But yeah, it's just one of those things. He's a rookie while we're making this list. In 2-3 years, totally see him, possibly getting into that upper echelon.
Yeah, and I just, I got a chance to see RJ at a really young age. And then he ended up playing on that U16 team, and they almost won a gold medal at the FIBA Americas. Like, they really pushed that U.S. team. They had a great team as well. They had, like, Iggy Brasdeikis, Andrew Nemhard, just a lot of talent coming out of Canada right now. And then RJ winning that gold medal. The game was actually without Lindell Wigginton, and another player that played a huge role in that game, the USA game that led them to the eventual gold medal game against Italy. Abu Kajab, who ended up winning was on the all-tournament team for the U19 World Cup. And yeah, like, he now plays for Boise State, was at Oregon for
2 years.
Yeah. But got to see RJ twice at the Hoop Summit. He, to me, looked like the best Canadian guy there on a team with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Came back that next year, won the game, led the world team in scoring. And they don't officially give out an MVP, but if they had, the MVP would have been RJ Barrett, I think.
Yeah. He'll build. Yeah, I'm not concerned for his future, other than like maybe leaving the Knicks as soon as you can.
Yeah. Well, we'll see how they build, but yeah, not the best circumstances to come into. RJ still, averaging 14.3, 2.6 assists, 5 rebounds in 30.4 minutes per game. I know his analytic numbers definitely not looking very good, which is the reason he's lower on the list than some might expect. But yeah, we still have a lot of faith in RJ, and just hoping that next season he comes back even stronger. And he's somebody I feel is going to build up a little more each season, at least for the first few years. So let's hope that next year the Knicks kind of figure a few things out. And at number 8, or no, number 7.
7.
Yeah, RJ was 8. At number 7, we have somebody who has just been a really solid rotation piece for the last number of years and has found a home. He was a really solid player at Stanford as well. Just like when you look at his analytic numbers, I thought of possibly ranking him a little bit higher. I think it's just the minutes played and the experience of the person I have in front of him, probably the only reason he's not. I chose Dwight Powell at 6. And he has started 37 out of the 40 games he played this year for the Dallas Mavericks. Just one of those guys who's like a rim runner, plays pretty solid defense, just excellent at his role. Right now, his net rating it's 134 offensive rating, 110 defensive rating. Some pretty solid like per minute numbers, nothing that blows the doors down or anything like that, but just seems to be worth his salary, and they seem to be winning a lot of games with him in the fold, and he works really well on that Dallas Mavericks team right now.
Yeah, I think he's a tough guy. I mean, yeah, you look at his stats, like 9.5 a game, just under 6 rebounds a game. Shooting 63% field goals right now. In 26 and a half minutes. And again, I think the Dallas team is on the up and up.
Yeah.
With Luka.
Good for about, I would say, 1.5 dunks a game.
Yeah.
A half dunk.
Yeah, he's not gonna give you a lot of frills, but he comes in, he's solid, he's worth what he's getting paid. And he's definitely someone that can help Team Keno. If he plays for Team Canada, definitely would help too.
Absolutely. Yeah, like he's somebody that I think would be a really good center for international basketball, just in terms of having that I would say for this Canadian team, like maybe more of the defensive presence. He's not known as like the best defender, but I think he's just solid, and just somebody what you're getting from in terms of his just a really good athlete. He's always been a really solid vertical athlete for his size. And at Stanford, his last 2 years there, he was definitely like a thorn in the side of Pac-12 opponents.
Yeah.
And he's well outplayed his he was chosen 45th in 2014 draft. And I think if they did a redraft, he'd certainly be in lottery contention. Yeah. So yeah, he's been a fantastic value, and has certainly found like a great spot out of Toronto. And another really strong Canadian to add to the fold in this list. Anything to add for Dwight Powell?
No, I mean he's a good player. I mean he's not the guy like I tune into the game to watch Dwight Powell, but when I'm reminded of his presence, then I'm like, oh, he does good things. But yeah, he's a solid player, and I think he'll have a good role for the next few years on that Dallas team.
For sure. Yeah. seems like he's become a real piece there and found his home. And they've done like such an excellent job kind of bringing him along as well. So yeah, it seems like he is really valued in Dallas right now. This player was, I remember hearing about him in high school, and it was kind of like he was seen more as like almost like a combo forward due to his athleticism, but never had the outside touch or anything you wanted to write home about. And then he, the one thing he has is just incredible tenacity and some like really quick leaping ability, like some great lateral quickness considering he's close to 6'9". And he played a vital role on one of the most fun championship series we've seen in recent memory. Tristan Thompson, the offensive rebounding machine.
Yeah. He's a bounder.
Yeah. He I think just his presence in that series alone brings him a little higher on the list. He was averaging a double-double this year, albeit on a team that is not going to be one of the 22 teams in Orlando. And yeah, like net rating is negative due to the team he's on right now. But just, you know what you're getting from Tristan. You're getting a guy who isn't going to be run off the floor if you go small. And certainly at times against the Warriors, like gave even Draymond Green like a lot of trouble on the boards.
Yeah. Oh, he's a tough rebounding inside presence. You know, was great. He was lucky that he got to be in those situations, you know, with LeBron, with Kevin Love, Kyrie, where he can kind of be that, you know, that tough, gritty guy. And he wasn't afraid to go up against Draymond and give him some attitude. His only things, you know, again, like I think he made his first 3-point shot ever this year. Like in a game, like
doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, but so he kind of harkens back to that, you know, that older style of, you know, big, tough. I know he's had some issues free throw shooting as well. He like switched hands a couple years ago.
Yeah, I remember when
he lefty and then he went right.
Yeah, that was crazy. Like thinking a NBA player just all of a sudden decides that he is shooting with the wrong hand.
Yeah, and, I don't know. I want to talk to a shooting coach too to be like, how do you even come to those conclusions? Like,
I think he improved slightly once he went to the right hand, though not really that much. But yeah, I guess it was a comfort thing. And yeah. I remember like he was playing in I actually got to see him play in a few pro-ams when I was still living in Toronto, and he rarely shoots anyway. But
yeah,
it's amazing that a guy makes it to the NBA and decides to change his shooting hand. And then I was living in Canada before he won a championship, so that should tell you something. It obviously worked out for him. And yeah, like a crucial piece on that Cavalier final championship team in 2016. Just you know his role. I'm sure there are lots of teams that could use him, just probably not at the salary that he's making. He earned a lot of money.
No, and he's still only 28.
He earned $80 million during his NBA career, and he's due. He's almost $100 million if you include this year. So yeah, he Tristan has done very well for himself. Obviously, plotting with the Kardashians as well. I don't really.
Yeah, I mean, usually that was a curse. It didn't work out very well for Rashad McCants. It didn't work out well for Chris Humphries. He and James Harden are really the only two that have really come out of the other side and still been able to put up some numbers.
I mean, you could, yeah. I think there's an argument one way or the other. But
that'll be a separate episode where we'll debate who did the Kardashians and came out the other side and was still successful on the court.
Yeah, with a different host, I'm hoping, because I'm not taking any part of that shit. But yeah, let's move on from Tristan Thompson. It was Brampton. I'm guessing.
Yeah, he's from Brampton. Yeah, Brampton. So he's like outside of Toronto.
Yeah.
But like I remember like hearing Corey Joseph being those two Canadian dudes at Texas.
Played in Texas, yeah.
Yeah, like that was pretty cool because again, Canada basketball, we were getting a lot of major D1 guys playing together, like a lot of these things. So it was cool.
And yeah, Tristan spent his last year at Finley. I saw him in the Hoop Summit as well. Just when it was played here in Portland. It was before I was going to practices, but I remember had a pretty solid game.
Yeah.
And has done very well for himself in the NBA. And we will see what is to come with Tristan Thompson after this season. But the fifth player is somebody I also had a chance to see in high school when I was still living in Toronto. He ended up going and playing in Las Vegas at Finley Pratt, where same place as Tristan Thompson playing his last year. And this guy was a late addition for University of Oregon, was a 3-year starter. By his final year, you went to him if you needed a bucket. You were just like, this guy can create for himself. He can create for others. You wanted the ball in his hands. And did he win Pac-12 Player of the Year that year?
He was Pac-12 Player of the Year his last year.
Okay,
yeah.
As he should have.
Yeah,
that was just a fantastic team. I still feel if Chris Boucher hadn't gotten hurt, they certainly could have won it all. They came very close. It was a couple
Final four with no Chris Boucher. It was pretty
Everybody always mentions the box outs to me with Jordan Bell, who had 16 rebounds in the game, but
another story for another day. But
absolutely, that one we can do together.
Yeah, we're talking Dillon Brooks.
Dillon Brooks had the chance before everything went down. I had the chance to go to Memphis and see Dillon in a couple games. In the first game I saw him play against Sacramento, he went for a 30-piece, and it was just really nice seeing him in his bag. I know he's struggled a bit this year just in terms of consistency, and his net rating isn't amazing, but Memphis is still winning games, and he's certainly part of it. He's certainly a guy that can get you some buckets. Very streaky shooter, but when he's on,
he's on. Yeah,
he's on. Certainly, it seems like he's worked quite a bit on his defense as well. He's always been aggressive. He's actually the statistic I found really funny with Dillon right now, leading the NBA in total personal fouls.
That's right. He's always been someone. Yeah, again, very aggressive.
As like a wing, I'm pretty impressed.
Yeah, he's always been very, very aggressive. Always had a very just a lot of energy going on, which I like. Yeah, like he's a bit of a streaky shooter. Like he's not someone I would say like it's a total catch and shoot machine here, but like when he catches on. Obviously for the Ducks, insanely clutch. He had those shots against UCLA, Cal, those 2 game-winning threes. But obviously we're talking NBA now. But I think again he has those nights where he gets 30 points. He gets you 20 plus. I mean, right now he's averaging 15 and a half a game, which I think is nothing to scoff at if that's your end of the year statistic. And obviously this year he's got that chance to help push Memphis into the playoffs.
Got himself a bag as well.
Yeah,
I have to congratulate him on. It was a 2nd round pick for Memphis after his junior year. He one thing I want everybody to look up with Dillon Brooks is the dunk he had freshman year on Frank Kaminsky. Oh, let's go.
That was pretty good.
I think Slam even had that as like Slam of the month. And he had
a few. If you watch him in especially his junior year at Oregon, like he definitely had a few dunks that were like I would define as like disrespectful.
Oh yeah. So when I'll talk about when I first saw him at playing for Father Henry Carr, I had heard about him, and I see this guy, and he looks, he's good. He's scoring a few buckets. The big guy, literally, for Father Henry Carr at the time was Tanvir Bhullar. who is 7'3", and they listed it like 270, was like easily 350.
These are big kids. Yeah, he's a big. He and his brother were both big.
Huge, like blocks out the sun when he's walking down the street. They are such sweet guys. He and his brother Sam, and he, so you have Dylan, you have Jaylen Poyser, and you see Dylan, and he wasn't as he really worked on his body. Like that's something that I think once he got to the NBA. But I remember watching him work out for U19s well before RJ was in the mix, and he was working out so hard, and I was super impressed with that. I think really great things about his work ethic. I interviewed him. He was just such a personable guy, and
I'll say fiery competitor, and I'll harken back to the first time I ever saw him was you sent me a commercial from Canada.
Yeah.
From this company called Sport Check, which is like a Dick's Sporting Goods in the U.S., like a general sports store. And they were doing this thing where it was called Players Getting Played, and they were pranking like high school like athletes. And so they invited Dylan Brooks, and they're profiling him. They're talking about he's just got this energy. He wants to win. He's a little cocky. He's full of And so they invite him to this 3-point competition, and they cover up the rim, so it's impossible for him to score.
Yeah, they put something over the rim.
Over the rim, so he can't.
A clear,
so you can't
plastic
see
thing
it.
over the rim.
You can't see it, but he doesn't know that. So he goes into this 3-point competition, and he's shooting, and he makes it like 3/4 of the way through, and he's just like nothing is falling, and he's like everything is weird, and then finally one of them ends up like staying on the flat thing, so he kind of
lands perfectly on it.
On the flat. So he figures out the
rules. He knew it was good, and then
definitely recommend. Maybe I'll try to link it in the video. If not, definitely look it up because he
was a great sport.
It was pretty hilarious, and he's one of those. And again, you think this kid, you're like, oh man, he looks pretty good, and then he ends up at University of Oregon, so that's super exciting for us because we got to watch him close. And again, he got his check, so he's getting paid now in Memphis. He's getting a good piece of bank. He's 24. That's a young team, led by Ja. So hopefully good future for Dylan.
Yeah, and the other thing with Dylan is he, during his last year at Oregon, I remember Synergy posting that he led the nation in isolation dunks. So he was a guy who would just take you off the bounce and throw it in your face.
No, good guy. Good
which you didn't expect from him. So yeah.
Well, that's fine. He's not gonna. Yeah, he's not like his dunks are pretty hard, but he's not like the number one athlete of all time. But he's a good finisher. Layups. He really is able to get to the basket and make something happen.
Yeah, takes a lot of tough shots, but he has an ability to make some as well. The guy I have number 4 was just fantastic during his lone year at Gonzaga, and he was born in Vancouver. He moved to Phoenix, I believe, when he was 3 years old. So spent most of his life in Arizona. Was at San Jose State. This amazing athlete who put up great steals and blocks numbers. We call them stocks. So he was a stocks master, putting up some really eye-popping stats. You watched him shoot, and it was like somebody throwing a catapult. It was just a really strange motion. Spends the year during the transfer at Gonzaga. Whatever Gonzaga has in their player development program, it's working because he came back. His shot looked better. Not that he shot a lot, but at least he improved even as a free throw shooter. But yeah, gets to Gonzaga, and it was no change to him. Was a very dominant college player during his lone year at Gonzaga. I think when you go back to 2011, if you go on College Basketball Reference, he might be second or third all time in box plus minus, which is a statistic that Zion Williamson was, for instance, the best in. And then you've had guys like Joel Embiid, Karl Anthony Towns, Jaren Jackson Jr. Like, you usually have a certain threshold, and he just crushed it. Most of my friends, like, who follow the NBA draft, thought that he was like a bona fide top 10. Some would even have him like maybe as like at least top 5, maybe even 2. I know some people had him that high. And he's gotten to the NBA. He's obviously he was a little bit older than RJ Barrett, but he is just doing like exactly what you thought he would. And this is Brandon Clark for the Memphis Grizzlies, having a great rookie year, got hurt, only started 3 games, but he's averaging 12 points per game in 21.7 minutes per game, 5.8 rebounds. The steals and blocks numbers aren't like as impressive as they were in college, but still good. And he is definitely a guy to watch. And then the amazing part with him, like the absolute anomaly with him, is not on a very high sample size, but shooting really well from 3-point range. Like, did that in summer league as well. And then
summer league MVP
right now. Yeah. Oh, MVP of the summer league finals. Yeah. Or no, he was just MVP of summer league in general.
Summer league in general. Yeah.
Yeah. Man, he was really good. And yeah, he's a little bit, definitely like was a senior age guy, born in 96. When you compare that to a guy like RJ Barrett, who's born in 2000. So they see like the possible higher upside with Barrett. They're not sure where Brandon's going to go, but man, are the early results really positive. And I still think he can definitely have an upward trajectory as well.
No, totally.
Crazy athlete for his size.
I think on Memphis, he's got that chance to really stake it out.
Yeah. Like, you love the fit with he and Jaren Jackson.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Like, he's I just thought, I don't know, the guy I was or where I was picturing him, I thought Phoenix would have been a great spot for him. I thought that they chose Cam Johnson at 11. Cam, a fantastic shooter, but I just thought Brandon Clark next to a guy like DeAndre Ayton. I think Memphis got an absolute steal.
No, totally. He's proven.
Much higher on my board as well.
Yeah, he's proven good worth, right? Like right out the jump. I mean, he's shooting 62%. All these things in 21 minutes. So it's like he's not even at that point yet where he's getting a bulk of minutes. And again, I think he's got a good chance coming up in this next little tail end of the season. And maybe I think the odds are good for Memphis to make the playoffs based on how this proposed 22-team format is. And then
yeah. Well, especially considering they have a nice lead right now on.
They have a nice lead with a limited amount of games left. It really airs, so it's like hopefully he'll get a good chance to get some good time there, and then hopefully lead into a good playoff series for Memphis to kind of get that experience to move forward.
Yeah, I'm just hoping everybody's healthy for Memphis. They had some guys banged up right as things kind of stopped, but yeah, Brandon Clark, man, like, just I remember the first game I saw him in that Duke game last year, and just popped right off the screen. Had a number of great games for Gonzaga. Rui Hachimura won Conference Player of the Year, and was, I think, on All-American teams over Brandon Clark. But the analytics numbers definitely favored Clark, and I was a little surprised he didn't get more. I know he was third team AP, but yeah, to me he was like a first or second team guy at least, and has had one of the best rookie years this year, along with teammate John Morant, and of course Zion Williamson, who is the BPM king of college basketball since 2011. On to this next choice, somebody who.
So we're number 3.
Number 3. This player, so much hype, like crazy amounts of hype. I was fully on the hype train as well.
Guilty myself. Like,
absolutely.
because you want to believe as well. Like that's part of the lore.
And I, getting to see him up close numerous times, the athleticism was insane. Like for a 6'8" player, just his run jump athleticism is out of this world. He's like a pogo stick, and then he's a sprinter. So he literally, his dad played in the NBA, and his mother was a silver medal sprinter, Marita Payne. His dad, Mitchell Wiggins. Andrew Wiggins is the player we have in number 3. I'm sure some people will have him maybe a little bit lower on the list, but he is still a guy that he's going to get you some buckets.
He's done good things. He's just not what people wanted him to become. I guess, like he's not in that conversation with, I don't know, like throw out names, Giannis, LeBron. Like he never reached that 1% of the NBA.
Yeah, he's not the all-star that people thought.
Yeah, but I think the percentage, like the player that he is still, he's a 20-point a game scorer. Like,
yeah,
period. And there's no shame in that. Defensively, like he might take some plays off at times.
Yeah, that's not optimal. Though I will say, it seemed like his defense was at least better. Very small sample size, but it seemed like his defense was at least better with Golden State. So that gives you some hope. The contract is the real killer here.
Yeah, but he's under contract for a while, so it's like.
Yeah, but just the amount of money.
No, totally. What is Golden State?
And yes, they have so much money involved, like with 3 guys right now, with obviously like Curry, Thompson, and Draymond Green.
Yeah, so if one of the 4 has to go, I mean, obviously Wiggins is the one who's
then you assume possibly a high pick, though of course I think they would think of possibly trading it as well. I think they just kind of want another 4 or 5.
Yeah, because he's getting $27 million this year. He's due $29.
Yeah,
just $30 next year.
Not an easy contract to trade. Like, and that was, I think Minnesota was kind of happy about that. Though, you could say what you want about D'Angelo Russell as well. But yeah, Wiggins at least seemed to kind of fit the motif better. The major thing with him, and his 3-point shooting on another small sample size, but his 3-point shooting seemed to get a little bit better at Golden State. They weren't winning games. Then you want to bring the whole team together and see how that works. It's not that the scoring, obviously he's been able to do that. It's the efficiency of that scoring, and then the fact that he does so little else.
Yeah.
And the one thing I will say, he was getting better as a passer this year. The settling for long twos is what really kills you. Like he's a guy that can get his shot, but is he getting the shot that you want him to get? And it's just not a lot of winning. The analytics do not like Andrew Wiggins. They didn't even before the draft. I remember like Kevin Pelton had some articles just saying like he kind of, with the numbers, he couldn't really believe the hype that Wiggins was getting. I want to talk about Andrew Wiggins as a prospect. So my very first Hoop Summit where I did all the games and the practices was 2012. And I will call that the year of Andrew Wiggins because he was by far the prospect that most of the people were excited to see. At the time, he was still considered a sophomore in high school. He eventually moved back to his original class. He was actually the number one sophomore at the time. The number one junior was either Julius Randle or Jabari Parker, and Andrew was actually a month older than Jabari, I believe.
I can never get into these things. Like it's always too crazy and complicated to me.
Yeah. So Andrew, in that 2012 game, scores 20 points, and Shabazz Muhammad scores 35, but the world team still ends up winning. They had Anthony Bennett on that team, who I felt Andrew was even much better than at that time.
Well, then Andrew went as the first pick the next year after Bennett. Yeah, so back-to-back Canadian first picks.
And ultimately, Andrew likely wouldn't have gone number one had Joel Embiid not gotten hurt in the 2000, like right before the 2014 draft, and there had been questions about his long-term health. Obviously, it seems like that would have been the better number one pick. But yeah, Andrew still lands Cleveland. Kevin Love, as we know, with that possession against Stephen Curry, and just giving them that extra offensive option, likely also has been better in Cleveland than Andrew ever has been in the NBA thus far.
But everything said about Andrew Wiggins, it's like he's still only 25.
Yeah, he's really young. In terms of Canada basketball, we're not sure if he's going back. I know there were issues with.
That's some outside of the court drama.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing with him also was his intensity. So in that 2013 Hoop Summit, arguably the best world team that maybe the Hoop Summit's ever had. I think it's one of the best teams since I've been going to Hoop Summit just in general. So Joel Embiid, Karl Anthony Towns. There were three guys that were first-round picks in that year's draft. So it was Dennis Schroeder, Sergei Karasev, who I don't think missed a shot the entire time out of Russia, ended up getting picked by Cleveland, didn't stick in the league very long, and Livio Jean-Charles, who had the best game out of anybody during that year's Hoop Summit game. So Andrew, in practice, he still hadn't decided where he was going to school yet. People thought it was between Florida State and Kansas. With Andrew, I remember a high-level Nike executive just saying, man, we wish we could just get a little more energy out of him. And somebody asking, did you ever have that issue with LeBron? This was an NBA executive asking him that. And he goes, hell no. Like, LeBron was always ready to go. LeBron was always there for the show. And so immediately there were some questions about Andrew. His lone year at Kansas, he had some great moments. He had some not so great moments, like very inconsistent. Joel Embiid, I think in retrospect, like
once I learned Joel Embiid, like it was that year at Kansas where you're like, oh, who's this Joel Embiid guy?
Yeah, he looked like the better long-term prospect. He improved so much from April of 2013 to when he got to Kansas, and then as he kept going on at Kansas, like he was really natural.
Yeah.
And obviously worked very hard as well, and had that fire that Andrew Wiggins seems to lack.
No, I mean, we hope Andrew, he's only 25. We hope I hope Golden State is able to somehow crunch the numbers, figure it out, make it work.
Yeah, I think they kind of hope he plays like maybe that Harrison Barnes-ish.
Yeah, like filling that role, because I mean, obviously Iguodala's out of the picture now too. Like they need someone on the wing to do that. And I mean, I think the way they run up, I just hope defensively he can do it enough just to keep his time on the court. But it's like, if you have Steph and Clay and Draymond, like, not a bad team to be out if you just like to score like he does.
Yeah, and the shooting's still the thing with him. And like, he took so many long twos. I remember, he had like decent indicators at least coming out of high school or out of college. Out of high school, I remember he kind of struggled from the free throw line. One thing I will say about him in high school, like, had some dominant moments. He had that Peach Jam game against Julius Randle where he guarded him, Julius didn't guard him, or he guarded Julius didn't guard him, and he like crushed it. They actually got to the Peach Jam finals, lost to the Oakland Soldiers that had Aaron Gordon by 1 point, but that was like something that was kind of unprecedented at the time. A team full of Canadian guys. I remember also watching Andrew try out for the U18s that year, and at the time there were a couple other guys who were pretty highly rated. His really good friend Xavier Raton-Mays, and then there was a guy who was kind of ranked like around him, who I ended up thinking was definitely better than Xavier, was Tyler Ennis, and Tyler Ennis ends up being a first-round pick.
Yeah, later.
after 1 year at Syracuse. So yeah.
Well, and the final thought on Wiggins is, regardless of what happens, he's also the first player in the history of the NBA from Thornhill, Ontario, Canada. So we're not talking about Toronto. We're talking about
named after his mom in Thornhill as well. Played a year at Vaughan.
Yeah. So Thornhill is a suburb right outside of Toronto. That's where Michael and I grew up. It's not the 4. It's not the 6. It's the 905.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we come from. So I thought the first player to ever make it out of Thornhill would probably be myself, until I realized I was delusional. And I'm very happy to see Andrew Wiggins has done much more with coming out of Thornhill to the NBA than I ever could have. So regardless, before we get into our top 2, I think it's a good time for us to now go over our honorable mentions, because there's kind of going to be some debate between 2 and 1, but I don't want to spoil anything for anybody.
So our honorable mentions, these are guys who have been solid role guys. Some may question leaving them off the list, but the first player I have to mention is Corey Joseph. He's been a really good backup point guard in the NBA. Played spot starter at times. Good shooter. I've heard great things about him as a teammate as well. For a while even played for the Toronto Raptors.
Played for the Raptors, the Pacers, the Kings. He's been around the league, but he's a solid contributing point guard.
Absolutely. And started with San Antonio.
Yeah. San Antonio those days.
Yeah. And the other person our honorable mention who's currently with San Antonio, Trey Lyles, who grew up in Indiana, was one of the top-ranked high school players in his class, has played a bit in Canada basketball, and just a solid power forward. I think he's most well-known for at this point being traded to Denver for the draft rights to Donovan Mitchell. Didn't end up being the best trade for Denver there.
Somebody had to do it.
Yeah. Trey was a Hoop Summit guy, playing next to Karl Anthony Towns, then played with him at Kentucky as well.
Yeah, Kentucky. It's funny. There's a lot of Canadian Kentucky guys out there. It's like
they had a
Jamal historically dating back to Jamal McGlure in the '90s. I mean,
for sure. And then
Kentucky.
A guy I want to mention as well that I saw in that same U18 camp I was talking about with Andrew Wiggins, Tyler Ennis, and Xavier Raton-Mays. Didn't end up making the team, but left an impression with me, is Michael Mulder. And he just had a contract with the Golden State this year. So he made it to the NBA, played at Vincennes, JUCO, and then was at Kentucky.
Well, and Tyler Ennis is one of those guys that should be in the league right now. I mean, he's on Raptors 905. He played. There
were injuries with Tyler.
He had that horrific injury, but that year he played for the Lakers when the Lakers were terrible. But I mean, he got a lot of free reign playing time. Like he should be somewhere. Like there's 30 teams, one of them should have Tyler Ennis on it.
Absolutely. Let's hope. Ken Birch plays for the Orlando Magic. Was one of the top players in his high school class as well. Absolute pogo stick. Really good athlete.
Out of Montreal.
Yeah. So he's another person on this honorable mention list. 2 guys who may be moving up soon. One I have a lot of confidence in and think he's a great player. Was tough leaving him off this list. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who is somebody that I had a chance to watch quite a bit in high school also. His 1 year at the Hoop Summit was shooting really well. And he is just somebody that he was one of the stars of Summer League, I felt. And right now, a really deep backcourt in New Orleans. But I think he's going to get a chance to play. Really good shooter, basically ambidextrous. And, just somebody I have a lot of confidence in as one of the future, cornerstones of Canada basketball.
Yeah, I think when we relook at the, make a list in a couple years, I think, Nickeil definitely has a chance to move up.
And then the final honorable mention I have is somebody who wasn't drafted, but he played well his 1 year at Arizona State. Heard a lot of really good things about his as an off-court player. Was a little surprised he wasn't drafted because of that, and because he's so strong and has a really good work ethic as well. Somebody I also had a chance to see at Adidas Nations. Came to Hoop Summit as a last-minute replacement player in 2018, and just never got his shot going, unfortunately, because of that. But he's played some spot minutes this year for Oklahoma City, and they seem to like him quite a bit. It's Lugents Dort.
Yeah, I think he's a dude making the most out of that two-way contract.
Yeah, and built like an absolute tank.
Yeah.
Yeah, he like had an NBA body from like a young age, and some solid athleticism.
Yeah, I think he's a little raw, and then I think he's one of those guys in a couple years, hopefully, fits out a role.
Yeah, if he can keep his defense going and improve the shooting as well, like he has a place. Let's get into the top two. I did a lot of thinking of these two players. I ended up going with the more established player at number one. Number two, another Kentucky guy. I think will be number one on this list very soon. Having a fantastic second season with the Oklahoma City Thunder after a great rookie year with the Los Angeles Clippers, part of that Paul George trade. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, all 6'6", 7-foot wingspan.
Yeah, point guarding, those are just such good number of someone that you want, running point for your team that's just long, ready to run up and down the court. And yeah, I think again, 21 years old right now, still a ton of upside, and he's already super impressive.
For sure, he's and what Oklahoma City's been able to do this year, getting him out of that Paul George trade, I think is fantastic for them, especially considering he has 2 more years on his rookie deal and he's already playing this well. He's an absolute player. I think has an all-star future.
Oh, totally. He's right now he's getting just under 20 points a game, 6 rebounds, 3.5 assists.
Yeah. He was drafted too low. He had a really small sample size as far as his 3-point shooting, but it seems like the shooting, it's not out of this world, but he's comfortable. And then his ability to make tough drives and he's one of those guys who's really hard to block.
Yeah. Well, totally. Just being long,
or at least gets there a lot too.
Long and agile. I just think, I think he's a super versatile guard. A lot of bright future for him in Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
Or leaving Oklahoma City at the end of his rookie contract.
Well, as a restricted free agent, I doubt it. But and I don't think they're giving him up. But he was another player at the Hoop Summit. He actually played at Hamilton Heights Christian with Nikhil. They're cousins. They're very close. So yeah, it's Nikhil Alexander Walker, and he is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. So they have the Alexander. And at the Hoop Summit, the thing I noticed about Shai was he was a leader. He was really vocal on the floor, and you could tell he was a competitor. Shot wasn't
what he did with the Clippers last year. He's ready to go in the NBA, and he's a player that's really made for the league.
Yeah. So the shot wasn't always falling, but he still managed to do many good things on the floor. His defensive potential is very high as well. I felt he went too low in that draft, and it seems early results are saying that he did.
And it's worked out well for him. I mean, he got to go to the Clippers, which was a good place for him to start. He was part of this trade. It's worked out well for him.
Yeah. And yeah, playing next to Chris Paul certainly doesn't kill him. But he, the Charlotte Hornets traded him on draft day for Miles Bridges, I believe. And
maybe
early returns, not loving that, but we'll see what happens.
That's on Charlotte.
Yeah, they definitely could come back to bite them. But yeah, I was a big fan of Shea coming out of Kentucky, and I think that he's like, he might be the cornerstone for Canada basketball. It was the impressive thing with him was going into his high school senior season, he was asked to play on the senior men's national team,
which is huge.
That should tell you something right there as well. But yeah, I've just been really impressed with him, and it's kind of like a coin flip, honestly, for the top spot. But we went with somebody who is a little bit more tried and tested at this point, has some playoff experience, and that is Jamal Murray, number one, another Kentucky guy.
And I've said Jamal's the best Canadian player for a little while now. You know, I've been saying it, and it's, again, between he and Shea, it is really a coin flip, and it's nothing wrong with either one. I just think, Jamal, especially in the, he has that playoff experience too.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's something for me, like that kind of carries a little weight. No, nothing on Shea, but just what Jamal's done, his ability to really shoot the three, like he is.
Yeah.
He's got the little bow and arrow thing going on.
Oh yeah, he definitely has that.
Yeah, and he's only 20. He's 23.
Yeah. Oh, still really young. Yeah, came out after 1 year at Kentucky.
Yeah, and then I think he and Jokic. I mean, that is a.
Yeah, and they seem to get along really well. I read where they've been working out like this whole time in Denver, and Jamal Murray is saying that Nikola Jokic is in great shape.
Sweet, good.
That's a scary proposition for Orlando.
Yeah, I feel like if that's like an X factor in and of itself, of him like being able to go, because every time Jokic gets the ball, I mean that's a problem. But yeah, Murray is also the highest paid Canadian ever. I want to say for almost any sport, the 5-year, $170 million contract.
Could be.
Because I don't know if hockey gets paid like that, but I don't really care either. So
yeah, props
to Jamal, because that's a nice little payday to go back to Kitchener.
So I was actually at let's talk Jamal Murray. I was at Jamal Murray's college announcement. It certainly seemed like Oregon was in the final two was
Oregon and Kentucky, yeah.
And I know Oregon had been on him. So I had a chance to see him in a few high school games for Orangeville Prep. But also, luckily, he was selected to the Hoop Summit 2 years in a row. He was another guy who was at the time a sophomore, but went back to his original class. He was the best shooter like both of those years.
Yeah,
he was shooting lights out. And so after his first year there, I think it was he and Emmanuel Mudiay were the only two players on the world team to score in double digits during the game, I believe. And I was just like, any smart high major school is going to offer this guy. And I don't know if it was being in Canada, but the offers really, I think, started rolling in. Oregon was on it, but the offers started rolling in after his second Hoop Summit game, where he just went off in the game.
Yeah.
He had 30 points. During practices, not only was he, once again, like the best shooter, but he was just torching scrimmages. And the guy was on fire. I remember there was this late clock situation scenario where they were playing 5-on-5. Jamal fires from like 50 feet. Boom.
Just a great shooter. Great. And I remember we saw him as well at a tournament out in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And again, the reason we went to these games was more like because he played on the same high school team as Thon Maker, and it was like, oh, Thon, and then you watch the game and you're like, oh, this other guy just did all this other stuff way better. Yeah.
The first time I saw him, I think it was during his freshman year. He played in the Jordan International Classic, and I was streaming the game. And I don't think I had heard of him before this game. And this guy is just torching the nets. Like, I'm almost certain he won MVP of the game, but he stood out more than anybody else in that game. And then comes to Hoop Summit, is one of the best players there. That next year, it's the year of Scalabrine and Ben Simmons, and they both had great games. But if you were to name an MVP, it would likely be Jamal Murray for the game. Plays really well at Kentucky, 7th pick in the draft, and he has, I think, even surpassed that ranking.
No, totally. I think he's on that fringe of he could get to the All-Star game. I think like point guard competition is guard competition's tough.
I think he's improved his athleticism, which I think was one concern.
Yeah.
He shoots like 89% from the free throw line. The 3-point percentage is still maybe like a little bit lower than you would like it to be. I know he shot close to 38% in his second season. The past couple years, it's dipped a little. This year, he's only at 34.5%, but he is one of those guys that can just get really streaky. And then he seems to just have that competitive nature.
Yeah, like that's why I think in the playoffs last year, he was like,
he's like a monster on the floor.
on game.
He's so quiet off the floor. I remember just anytime I would talk with him, he was just a really soft-spoken guy and very humble. He gets on the floor and he is so intense, and I loved it. He's just such a competitor. And then the real cool Jamal Murray moment was, and I think this one helped his draft stock as well. He was playing the Pan Am Games were in Toronto, and to get to the gold medal game, it was USA and Canada. And I had a chance to go to the game. Jamal Murray for the first 3 quarters looks completely outmatched. He's guarding mainly Bobby Brown, who's at this point had played in the NBA a bit, was playing pro ball. The other guy, the USA also had Anthony Randolph, who was doing really well in that game as well. Canada had Andrew Nicholson was the other main guy, and then Tristan. So Jamal goes scoreless for the first 3 quarters. In the fourth quarter and overtime, scores 22 points. And this guy was going crazy. Like after each shot, he was just hyping up the crowd. Yeah. It was obviously there for him, and just so intense. I'm sitting close to his father, Roger, and Roger is like watching it like this. Like he's like, and if you can see me on video, but Roger just an intense stare down, and Jamal just lives up to that challenge. Great family is what I was told about him, like right off the bat. The work ethic, I heard amazing things about, and it seems like he's absolutely lived up to it. And he's been a vital part of a team that on 2 years running is one of the best teams in the NBA.
Yeah, no, Denver's a force, and he's part of the reason why. But yeah, looking at this list, it's like if Canada can just get like a quarter of these guys to show up in the.
I know Jamal and RJ were committed.
Yeah,
I believe Shea was. Nikhil, right now there are 22 guys from Canada in the NBA.
Yeah.
They're eventually going to have to cut Canadian guys. Like if Canadian players want to play for this team, there are going to be too many to be on a 12-man roster.
which is awesome and cool to see. Because again, I remember like as a kid, it was just like you never saw that problem for Canada. And I mean,
the development of Canada basketball has been fantastic. A lot of credit to the coaching there. Of course, players going to prep schools in the United States and then going on to college. But now a lot of prep options in Canada as well, and some players are staying home and developing there. Thinking anybody on the list, but yeah, like one guy I know, like right off the bat, like Lou Gents went back to Canada after being
Jamal came
yeah,
back.
no, Jamal, absolutely, yeah, number one guy. Yeah, so Jamal stayed in Canada for high school. Iggy Brazdakis, another player who ended up in Canada when he finished off his high school career. Yeah, just a lot of great things with Canada basketball.
I think the AAU quality, the number of AAU teams is also,
sure.
you know, like it used to only be like a couple. Now there's some really, you know, good programs out there. No, it's huge. I'd love to see them play in the Olympics.
Yeah, we're just hoping they get there. But yeah, we need that team at full strength, and that's the ultimate hope. So, guys on our list, guys off of our list, please step up. We would love to see Canada get into the Olympics and see what they have going. As a country with now the second most players in the NBA, let's do this, Canada.
Yeah, it's
going. And this list also, this was just NBA players. There are plenty of Canadian players playing overseas right now who are excellent as well.
Oh, totally. That have had spots on the national team too. You know, like that are super competitive players. So I'd love to see that qualify for the Olympics. Bring some more competition to the international basketball.
Yeah.
Period.
That's the ultimate hope. But yeah, so this was our list of top 10 Canadian NBA players, current NBA players.
Current NBA players as of right now. So don't say like, oh, this guy from 10 years ago, like, oh, we didn't have Steve Nash on the list. It's like, unless
Steve Nash is the Canadian GOAT until
proven otherwise. Yeah, but you know what? If you have any Canadian players you think are coming up next, or you think that's you who's coming up next, let us leave a comment, drop your mixtape. Let us see what you got going on. We love watching any basketball we can.
And where we go wrong, make your own list.
Make your own list.
Yeah.
Give us a good reason why. I mean, again, Jamal and Shea is a coin flip.
For sure.
It just flips Jamal right now.
Yeah.
But it might be flip Shea tomorrow.
Jamal. Yeah, let's see what happens to end the season. But yeah, thank you so much for coming by Viseland.
Don't forget to subscribe if you like the podcast. Leave a comment, give us a thumbs up, share it with a friend. We definitely appreciate that. And if there's anything you think we did wrong or you think you'd like to talk more about, we are down to listen.
For sure. Viseland, we're all about having a dialogue. And yeah, just wanted to say, as far as the protests and everything going on right there, we are for ending systemic racism. So let's keep that in our conscience as well. If you have the ability to donate to a cause to end that and, fight for that, let's just do it. So
we can. The power's in our hands.
Yeah. And I know Canada has been out fighting for it as well. And there's still a long way to go. But thank you so much for listening. We love you guys. And we know that this one probably went long. Canada is very much in our hearts. We spent most of our lives there. And we love Canada basketball. I would love to see it eventually be on the podium in the Olympics and competing with the USA as they have been at the youth levels. So yeah, let's go Canada.
Let's go Canada.